thank you to my fellow panelists, and thank you all for coming along to this webinar to discuss this consequential topic. As Khalid mentioned, my name is Pablo Brait. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and I want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners of the land from which I am speaking to you. I'm a campaigner with an NGO called Market Forces. We are working to ensure that the financial institutions that have stewardship over our money use it to enhance and protect our environment and climate rather than harm it. So to answer some of the points that Khalid mentioned, I'll begin with some of the findings of our recent research compiling Adani Group's under construction and planned new fossil fuel projects, which clearly shows, despite Adani's claims, that it is not a company in transition. Then I'll zoom in on the infamous Carmichael thermal coal project, which Tim's already talked quite a bit about, why it's globally relevant and therefore something financiers need to act on. And I'll end with what are the must-haves for a net zero by 2050 transition plan for the Adani Group, as its CFO has indicated it intends to release one soon. Now, earlier this year, we were seeing Adani Group promoting its investment in renewable energy and signaling its intention to help lead the transition to a low carbon future, all while pursuing the Carmichael coal project. So just as an example, here are two quotes from the head of the Adani Group claiming to support clean energy and decarbonisation. And then this middle quote, which actually came in between those other two quotes, celebrating the milestone in the construction of a new thermal coal mine in 2021. So looking at these inconsistencies, we decided to analyse Adani's own reporting, websites and media releases to assess whether Adani's rhetoric about transitioning was aligned with its business plans. What we found was not a company in transition, but a company, as Tim mentioned, expanding in all directions. So in renewable energy, yes, but also alarmingly and significantly in the burning and mining of thermal coal as well as oil and gas. Now you can see down the bottom of this slide a link to the full results of our research on Adani Group's planned and under construction fossil fuel projects. And that'll be in the download slide pack for you to click on and explore. What I really want to focus on and highlight to you all is that Adani is looking to double its coal-fired power capacity and massively increase its thermal coal mining via 9 new thermal coal projects that Adani will either own or operate on behalf of others. As Tim mentioned, there's also new coal and LNG terminals pursued by Adani Ports, a $4 billion highly polluting coal to PVC plant and expansions in gas and petrol distribution. And it's also important to note that since we did and released our research in June and July of this year, Adani announced that it was purchasing a 1,200 megawatt coal power station with a potential expansion to 1,800 megawatts, and it's purchased 3 new coal mining blocks with combined reserves of 598 million tonnes. So look, I want to focus briefly on the Carmichael coal project, which has triggered one of the biggest environmental campaigns in Australia's history and is a global issue. So this is a new thermal coal mine with a new rail line up to 60 megatons for the mine. 103 major companies from all over the world have now refused to be directly involved with this project, including many that are watching this webinar. The reason why all these companies have decided to cut ties and not be associated with Carmichael, and the reason why every other investor, banker and insurer on earth should too, is that it's not just a massive new thermal coal mine, but it's the first thermal coal mine in the so far untapped Galilee Basin. Adani's mine will pave the way for the rest. And we're talking 6% of the world's 1.5 degree carbon budget just in one basin if most proposals go ahead. It is both a climate and reputation destroyer. And thanks in part to the Galilee Basin mine proposals, Queensland is the state or province with the biggest proposed coal mining capacity on Earth. My point again is that this is a global problem, not an Australia problem. Every person and financial institution looking to prevent catastrophic climate change needs to help keep Galilee Basin coal in the ground. This project needs to be stopped, and we all have a stake in making that happen. Now, a lot of institutions still retain ties with the Adani Group, particularly via shareholdings, bond holdings, and service provision like bond issuing. As Tim pointed out, Adani Group must be treated as a single financial entity because that is how it operates and that is how it funds Carmichael. So by retaining ties to the Adani Group, investors and banks are risking supporting the Carmichael coal project and other new fossil fuel projects. So be warned. If you don't want to be associated with Carmichael, then all ties to the Adani Group must be cut until Carmichael is abandoned. It's also important to note that Adani has not obtained free, prior and informed consent for its Carmichael coal project. Wangan and Jagalingou representatives have been fighting this project since its inception. And in fact, a protest at the mine site by the W&J starting 3 weeks ago is ongoing. Traditional owners are worried about their sacred sites and they're refusing to leave their protest until Adani ends its work on Carmichael. Now, before I get to my final item, which addresses what a net zero by 2050 transition plan for Adani Group must include, I want to mention that the download slide deck of this webinar does have a lot more fully referenced detail than what I was able to cover about the Carmichael project and the Adani Group's many controversies and other items. So really encourage people to have a look at that, download it, send it around to your colleagues and other decision makers within your organization. Now, back to a broader view. So Adani Group CFO is promising a full portfolio plan to align Adani with the IEA net zero scenario to be released at the time of the COP. Meanwhile, construction on new coal mines and power stations continues. So consider me to be a skeptic of this claim. Now, according to the IEA report, net zero by 2050 means in part, no new fossil fuel supply projects, no new coal-fired power stations, and a phase out of coal power by 2040 globally. So if Adani was to align its business with this net zero scenario, what are some of the basics that it would need? Well, in short, it would need to stop work on Carmichael, it would need to cancel new fossil fuel projects, and put forward a timeline for phasing out its existing coal-fired power stations by 2040 at the latest. So to finish up, we believe now is the time to cut ties with the Adani Group if you don't want to support or be linked to the Carmichael project and its other new fossil fuel projects. Only with Adani's adoption of a plan that includes the points I just mentioned should this position be reconsidered. Thank you, and back to you, Khalid.